Morning everybody, how you all doing? So recently I've been watching quite a few of the Patriot protest marches, in particularly the one in Liverpool from, I think it was last weekend, with Nick Tenconi and his mass deportations protest march through Liverpool. And this is a prime example of what I'm going to talk about. We're going to be talking about how Antifa, or as I like to call them, pANTI-FArts, organise and try to stop marches. So they set off, they're marching, police obviously not doing their jobs as usual. They left the entire left side of the protest march completely unpoliced, and Antifa were at the side of them, the far left, and they were like trying to get into the crowd, and it was the stewards that are actually fending them off. The police weren't really doing anything. But then, you know, you look back at when they're escorting the far left into protests, it's like a column, it's like a complete square column around the far left protecting them as they go in. Yet when it comes to the Patriots, when it came to Liverpool, completely one side of the march left unprotected. And that's why we had instances where there were the far left trying to infiltrate and cause trouble. I also noticed that as they were marching, there were spotters. There were definitely spotters at the side of the march. They got caps on, they were on mountain bikes, constantly on their phones, relaying the information back to where the Patriot March was, to the people who were organising Antifa. Now this paid off because they managed to stop the march. They managed to block off a road, Antifa, and stop the march dead in its tracks. Nick Tenconi wasn't best pleased. He more or less came out and said, so basically you're saying that you can't police, because they were saying we don't have enough police officers to safely keep the march going because they blocked off the road. We don't have enough police officers to deal with the far left thugs in the road. So I was surprised Nick Tenconi didn't bring this up, actually, because I would have said this. I said, well, why aren't you issuing dispersal orders then? Because they're quite obviously involved in antisocial behaviour. They've attacked the march several times. Why aren't you issuing dispersal orders? It's a fair question. We've seen them do it several times on Patriot marches. We've seen the police issue dispersal orders to get people out of the way on the threat of arrest if they don't move. So why wasn't this done at the Liverpool march, where Antifa were blocking the path of a peaceful protest? Why weren't they told to move on? Because that could be construed as antisocial behaviour. Because let's face it, Antifa aren't there to counter-protest. They're not there to get their side of the argument across. They're purely there to be violent and attack people to try and shut them down. And that's exactly what they did with the UKIP march. And that day the police basically just showed their inadequacy or their unwillingness to go up against the far left. Absolute joke. So my solution would be to have spotters of your own. If you're organising a march, have spotters of your own, probably 10 feet in front of the march, and some people at the side of the march, marshals, and spot these people and inform the police they're spotting for Antifa, they're telling us where they're going, and insist the police move them on. That's what you need to do. Of course, there is always the argument of, would it be best to have a static protest rather than a march? Pick your static protest right in the centre of the town centre and don't march anywhere. Just have your protest static. That way, the police don't have an excuse to say that they don't have the resources to police the march. It's it's tactics and counter tactics, really, with this sort of thing at the minute. I was also watching, because I find this absolutely disgusting. Young Bob, he was debating. He goes to Speaker's Corner a lot. He debates, and you know, I've got nothing but respect for the guy. Anybody that's willing to go on their own and stand up for their beliefs and argue, doesn't matter whether I agree with what they're arguing about or whatever. I'm obviously there arguing about Islamic scripture and Christian scripture. It's having the balls to go and do it. Got nothing but respect for people that are willing to stand up, go out there and defend what they believe. Got nothing but respect for that. Now, I don't know, this wasn't at Speaker's Corner. I was watching this video last night. I think it was Manchester or somewhere like that. Young Bob was out. He was debating with a Muslim guy about abortion. Obviously, this gathered a large crowd and loud crowd of lefties as well. And all they were doing was debating scripture and the subject of abortion, which is perfectly okay to do. That's how we gain knowledge, through debate and having our opinions challenged. But of course, that's not what the lefties do, because the lefties, they can't debate. They lack the intellectual capacity to have an intellectual debate. That's the part and parcel of it. So what they did, the first instance was this thing came up to Bob, unscrewed a bottle of water. I saw what they're doing in the back. Unscrewed a bottle of water in the back, came round the back of him and proceeded to pour, or tried to pour, a bottle of water over his head. And they always come from behind. They never come from the front, because they're cowards. They know if they come from the front, they're most likely going to get their teeth punched down their throat. So they always come from behind because they're cowards. They can't face their attackers because they're weak. Anyway, young Bob managed to fend this first attacker off. He was then having a debate, and then this, all I can describe as a mutant lefty, the great unwashed, came up behind him and slapped an egg on his head, which is assault. You might think it's funny, but that's actually assault, as is pouring water over somebody, because how does young Bob know what that liquid is in that bottle? Could be bleach, could be acid. And if it was me, I would be sending out a warning before I went on these debates and stuff, and saying, if you come and attack me, I will use the legal amount of force that I'm allowed to use to defend myself, because I would. We have a right to self-defense in this country. It's defined under reasonable force, and reasonable force is proportionate to the threat. So that does mean that if you believe your life is in danger, or you're about to be attacked, you can preemptively attack an attacker. Now, you've got to be really careful when you do this. You're allowed to defend yourself, but you're not allowed to attack. So a good example of this is on my channel. So I had a guy, this was 2 years ago. I went to the May Day gala thing, and I had an Antifa scumbag walk over to me from a few hundred yards away, spotted me. First he was sticking the finger up at me, and I was laughing at him, so that obviously agitated him. So he came over, nobody stood around me, completely open space, stood directly in front of me, turned his back on me, and then proceeded to do the Anti-FART tactic of trying to back into you with a rucksack. Now, the first thing I did was just move out of his way, because I was recording all this on camera. I moved out of his way. I asked him what he was doing. No response. He then proceeded to follow me, trying to back into me. And this is when I responded with force. I pushed him away, which you're perfectly allowed to do. Push him away. That's perfectly reasonable under reasonable force. Somebody gets into your space, into your personal space right up close, you can push them away preemptively to stop an altercation happening. And you can warn them, don't come any further, keep away from me. And it's important that you say that, because you're establishing that you're using reasonable force. That's what you're doing. What you can't do is push them away, and if they fall on the floor, then go in and start kicking them on the floor. Then that's classed as an attack, and that's going to land you in trouble. Reasonable force is directly proportionate to the threat that you're facing. So if somebody gets in your face, you can push them away. It's perfectly legal. I've used it many times on the doors when we've had drunk people trying to get into my face. Just push them away, and you say, stay away. You firmly say, stay away. You're letting them know that you're not having that. And that's what people need to do. Like I said, what you can't do is attack them. You have to be constantly walking backwards. That would be my suggestion as well. Walk backwards. And film everything. And everybody, I keep saying this, right? Everybody needs to get one of these. You need a body cam. I would suggest anybody that's on a march, stewards, anybody like that, you get yourself a body cam. This one records for 12 hours, non-stop. So you start it at the beginning of the march and have it running all the way through the march. So if there is any altercation, you have it all on camera, and you've got your video evidence to back up your claim of self-defense. You've got to start fighting smartly against these people, because although they're organized, they're not very smart at all. Not at all. Anybody that substitutes violence for an argument, that automatically loses. Every time you're having a debate with somebody and the far left resort to violence to try and shut you down, they immediately lose the argument. They lose the battle straight away, because all they're doing is proving they don't have the intelligence to debate with you logically, because they don't have any arguments. That's why they have to resort to censorship and violence, because their arguments are weak and fall flat when put under scrutiny. This is Vindicator, signing off.